Ready for a journey back in time.
I'm always ready for a good time travel adventure, especially when it involves following Jesus.
Me too, and this one is full of surprises. Today's deep dive takes us to ancient Philadelphia, walking alongside Jesus during his final year. We're going to be looking at paper 167 in the Urantia book, The Visit to Philadelphia.
Yeah, this paper is packed with insightful stories.
It really is, and trust me, this isn't your average Sunday school lesson.
No, not at all.
Get ready for unexpected encounters, social dynamics that'll make your head spin, and spiritual insights that still resonate thousands of years later.
Absolutely. You see, what's fascinating here is the context. Jesus and his apostles have just wrapped up a really intense preaching tour, relying mostly on just the power of the spoken word rather than miracles.
So different from some of the periods we've looked at before.
Yes, very different.
Less about the spectacle and more about the message, I guess.
Right, and now they arrive in Philadelphia seeking a little bit of rest.
Just kicking back, relaxing.
Yeah, but, well, as we'll see, even quiet moments with Jesus, they tend to turn extraordinary.
That's an understatement. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Okay.
Imagine a Sabbath breakfast hosted by a wealthy Pharisee, someone who supports Jesus' teachings. Now, this isn't just any breakfast gathering. It's a room buzzing with the who's who of religious scholars, influential figures, many of whom traveled all the way from Jerusalem just to be in Jesus' presence.
Like the place to be.
Oh, yeah. Everyone wants a piece of Jesus, right?
Exactly. And you can practically feel this tension crackling in the air. You've got this, on one hand, this undercurrent of excitement, this curiosity about this teacher who just speaks with such authority.
They've heard the rumors. They've seen maybe a few miracles.
Yeah, but at the same time, on the other hand, you've got this skepticism, right? This watchful eye. Folks ready to pounce on any little perceived misstep.
Like they're waiting for him to slip up.
Exactly. And that's where things get really, really interesting.
Oh, this is where the drama unfolds.
Wait, this is it.
A high-ranking Pharisee from Jerusalem arrives, expecting, of course, to be given the seat of honor. The place reserved for the most esteemed guests.
Of course, makes sense.
But guess what? That seat is already occupied by Jesus himself.
Oh, boy. Now we're talking.
I know, right?
So now you might think, okay, a seating arrangement. Really? Is that a big deal?
I'd be mortified if I did that today, but maybe not surprised if it was like a really important gathering.
Well, yeah, and in this context, it speaks volumes. Seating arrangements weren't just about comfort. They were a powerful symbol of social hierarchy. So this seemingly small snub, well, it was actually a major breach of protocol.
Okay.
It highlighted this growing tension between the established religious order and, well, the revolutionary message that Jesus embodies.
It's like that awkward moment when you accidentally sit in the boss's chair at a meeting, only amplified like 1,000 times over.
Exactly, 1,000 times over. But, Jesus, being the master teacher that he is, he seizes this opportunity.
Of course he does. He never lets a good teaching moment slip by.
Never. Never. He notices a man with dropsy in the crowd, desperate for healing.
Oh, this poor guy.
I know, and he poses a question that just cuts right to the heart of the matter. Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?
Silence.
Oh, you could hear a pin drop in that room. Everyone knew the strict interpretations of Sabbath law that some factions, really clung to.
Oh, yeah.
But, they also sensed that Jesus wasn't asking a simple yes or no question.
There's always a deeper meaning with him.
Always. He was challenging their priorities, their very understanding of compassion.
And in a true mic drop moment, what does Jesus do? He ignores the glares and the whispers and just heals the man right then and there.
Classic Jesus. Actions speak louder than words, right?
Yeah, but he's not done shaking things up. Oh, no. He launches into the parable of the Great Supper, and let me tell you, this story would hit a little too close to home for some of those listening.
Oh, for sure. This parable is not just a charming story about a dinner party gone wrong.
Right.
It's a scathing critique of the religious elite who were just so focused on their own status and their rigid interpretations of the law that they were missing the entire point of faith.
Which is?
Love, compassion, and radical inclusivity. Think about who might have been drawn to Jesus' message. The poor, the sick, the outcasts, those who had been rejected by the very people claiming to represent God.
Wow. It's like Jesus was saying, my table is open to everyone, regardless of your social standing or how perfectly you follow the rules. Come as you are.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It really is. And so I have to ask, how does this parable resonate with you today? Are there ways in which we, even with the best of intentions, might be excluding others, self-prioritizing things over a genuine connection.
It's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life that we forget about the real heart of it all.
It really is. It's a question worth pondering. But before we get too comfy with our reflections, things take another unexpected turn. Remember how I mentioned those social dynamics?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Jesus isn't done challenging the status quo just yet. So the very next day, Jesus is in the synagogue, and like we've come to expect, things don't stay quiet for long.
Oh, no, not at all. Picture this. You've got this woman bent over, unable to even stand up straight, and she's been like this for 18 years.
18 years? That's awful. What's wrong with her?
Well, the text says she's suffering from a spirit of infirmity, which I'll admit sounds a bit mysterious.
It does sound a little like something out of, like, a ghost story.
Right. But here's where the Urantia book's perspective is so helpful. It explains that this spirit of infirmity, it wasn't just physical. It was this deep emotional and mental anguish, what they call a depression of mind, even a bondage of fear.
So we're really talking about mental health here.
Yeah, and it reminds us that even back then, people struggled with these invisible illnesses, right? The kind that don't always have outward signs, but can be just incredibly debilitating.
And probably so misunderstood back then.
Oh, absolutely. And this story becomes even more powerful when you think about how Jesus responds. He sees this woman, he recognizes her suffering, and he immediately offers her healing.
But of course, not everyone's thrilled about this.
Of course not. Right on cue, you've got this synagogue ruler ready to enforce the letter of the law, even if it means denying someone compassion.
It's like pick your battles, right?
Well, and Jesus, never one to back down from a teaching moment, he points out this hypocrisy, caring for animals on the Sabbath, but denying a woman relief from her suffering.
It's almost funny if it weren't so sad. But okay, so we've got healing on the Sabbath. What comes next?
Well, then Jesus dives headfirst into another controversial topic, marriage and divorce.
Oh boy, that's a subject that probably had everyone in the room squirming a little.
Oh, I'm sure. But it's important to remember that Jesus wasn't calling for a complete abolishment of all divorce laws. At that time, Jewish law already allowed for divorce in certain circumstances, which actually was more progressive than some surrounding cultures where women had very few rights at all.
So if it wasn't about, like, totally overturning the law, what was he getting at?
Well, he was addressing the spirit of the law, or rather the lack thereof.
I see.
You see, Jesus was condemning the way divorce laws were being twisted, manipulated to really disadvantage women, often leaving them destitute and with very few options.
It's awful.
It is. And the Urantia book emphasizes Jesus' stance on the equality of men and women in marriage, which, for that time period, it was a radical concept.
Still pretty radical in a lot of places, sadly. But in the middle of these, kind of heavy discussions, we also get these glimpses of pure tenderness and love.
Oh, absolutely.
The Urantia book tells this beautiful story about Jesus stopping to bless some children, welcoming them into his presence without any hesitation.
Oh, it's such a beautiful image.
It really is.
Children, with their open hearts and that innocent trust, they really embodied the kind of faith that Jesus valued most.
It's a good reminder for all of us, really.
It is.
So picture this. Jesus and his followers are back on the road, making their way from Jericho to Bethany.
Quite a hike.
It was. And I imagine the mood was probably this mix of, exhaustion from all the travel, but also this anticipation, right, for this warm welcome that was waiting for them in Bethany.
Oh, yeah, Bethany was like their home away from home.
Exactly.
A place of true friendship and refuge. Remember, they had dear friends there, a whole family that opened up their home, their hearts to them.
Which makes the news that arrives, well, even more unsettling.
Yeah, this isn't good.
So a messenger suddenly appears, breathless, totally filled with urgency, arrives straight from Bethany with news about Lazarus, their good friend, being deathly ill.
And it's really clear, I think, even just from the messenger's tone, like the urgency in their voice, that this is way more serious than just a simple cold or flu. This is serious stuff.
Yeah, and you can almost feel the disciples' concern in this moment. Their love for Lazarus, mixing with this growing anxiety. They turn to Jesus, expecting him, to drop everything and rush to Lazarus' side. But then Jesus does something completely unexpected.
Totally throws him for a loop.
He pauses.
Yeah.
And in that pause, you get the sense that he's listening to something far, far beyond what any of us with just our human ears could ever pick up on. And then really quietly, almost cryptically, he says, this illness isn't unto death, but for the glory of God.
Oh, man. And now the disciples are really confused.
Talk about an understatement. I know I would be.
Absolutely. It's like your friend is on his deathbed, and Jesus seems, I don't know, almost unconcerned, even hinting that there's this much bigger picture that they're totally missing out on.
Right, and it's such a pivotal moment in the story because it highlights this really stark difference between, like our very human understanding of illness and death and this much larger, divine perspective, a plan that encompasses so much more than we can even grasp.
A much bigger perspective.
So much bigger. Now, before we get too far, I do want to circle back to that conversation about angels that we briefly touched on earlier. How does that fit into all of this?
Wow, that's a great point. And it's actually one of the things I love about this section in the Urantia book, the way it ties together these seemingly random threads into this really cohesive picture.
It's really masterfully written when you think about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So remember, this whole discussion about angels is sparked by a question from one of the Sadducees traveling with Jesus, which, this is significant because the Sadducees, unlike the Pharisees, they didn't believe in angels at all.
They were kind of the skeptics of their day, I guess.
Big-time skeptics. And Jesus, ever the patient teacher, uses this as, the perfect opportunity to clarify some common misunderstandings about, the angelic realm.
And what does he say? What do angels actually do?
So he really emphasizes that angels aren't simply humans who have died or these, all-knowing, all-powerful beings.
That's interesting. I've always wondered about that.
Yeah, and the Urantia book paints this picture of angels as this distinct order of beings created by God to serve specifically as messengers, guardians, and guides, especially during that crucial transition between life and the afterlife.
So they're kind of like our companions on the journey to the next life.
In a sense, yeah. It's as if Jesus is giving us this little peek behind the curtain, revealing this vast and intricate spiritual world that operates in ways we may not fully get, but that's definitely as real as the physical world around us.
Definitely gives you chills just thinking about it.
For sure.
But coming back to that urgent message about Lazarus, while Jesus, is operating from this expanded awareness, this bigger picture, the disciples are understandably terrified. Remember, they had been warning Jesus about the danger lurking in Judea, especially in Jerusalem, where the religious authorities were actively seeking to silence him.
And it wasn't an exaggeration, this was a legitimately dangerous time for anyone challenging the status quo, especially someone like Jesus who was rocking their world, shaking the very foundations of their beliefs.
Right. So when Jesus announces his decision to return to Judea, to go straight into the heart of danger, it's not just this act of compassion for a friend, it's an act of defiance. He's deliberately walking straight into the lion's den.
Talk about a power move. And I think it's in this context, amidst all the fear and uncertainty, that the true weight of Jesus's words about Lazarus' illness not being unto death starts to really sink in.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It wasn't just about a physical healing.
Right. It went way beyond that. He was hinting at something far more profound, this incredible demonstration of divine power that would just shatter their entire understanding of life and death.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We've explored themes of compassion, social justice, delved into the often misunderstood realm of angels, and witnessed Jesus challenging not only societal norms, but also the very limits of human understanding. It's a lot to ponder, and we hope this journey sparks your own reflections on faith, courage, and the boundless possibilities that exist beyond our limited human perspective. Until next time.